Pantheon Rise of the Fallen is a classically inspired modern MMORPG that was the brainchild of Brad McQuaid of Everquest and Vanguard fame. It is an independent MMO that is being crowdfunded, and it is held by a passionate team of developers over at Visionary Realms. A challenging PvE MMO focused on the social aspects of the MMORPG genre as you venture across the dangerous and daunting world of Terminus in search of adventure, wherever you may find it. And I got to play. Today, I'm going to share that experience with you, getting to play Pantheon Rise of the Fallen in its current pre-alpha state. This was something I was able to do because I signed up for the content creator program over at Visionary Realms, a link of which I have included down below if you are interested in doing so yourself. We're going to talk about some general ideas of the game, the gameplay, the crafting, the harvesting, the traversal of the game, and really the general feelings I got while playing. And we'll end with an idea of whether I feel reinvigorated about how the game is looking, or if I have new concerns or more grave concerns than I did going into it. Visionary Realms, although they did provide me with the key, were kind enough to let me say what I feel about the game. I didn't really have any restrictions on what I could say. So let's get into it, and you can see my kind of, not really first impressions, but my general feeling of the game, where it's at right now. You know that feeling you get when you log into an MMORPG that holds deep meaning to you? When the music hits and it transports you. Perhaps it was Everquest, or maybe Ultima Online, or the hundreds of others that have been deeply impactful to players all around the world, from World of Warcraft to Black Desert Online. Whether it's the 1000th time you log in or the first, video games and MMORPGs especially can evoke powerful emotions. I'm happy to report that the same beautiful emotional connection was stirred by the music and splash screen for me in Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. A game that has not fully launched and still doesn't even have a persistent test, though they are currently working towards that, with the success of their monthly testing leading the way in potentially having, before too long, persistent worlds in the game. It is a game that I have followed in development more than perhaps any other, with perhaps the exception of Warhammer Online or EverQuest Next. All of the gameplay footage shown here is from the game itself in its current state. The game is in pre-alpha, and much of the footage will represent that, so before passing judgment on the current assets, just keep that in mind. They are definitely subject to change, and some of them certainly will. Character models, for example, are currently being worked on and re-rigged. With this video, Visionary Realms has given me free reign to talk about it at length and give my honest opinions. This is not a sponsored video, but I was able to play the game as part of the streamer program, which I have linked down below if you want to sign up yourself. Let's start with the meat of the game, the combat and general gameplay feel. Gameplay in Pantheon feels like a solid mix between Vanguard, EverQuest, and early World of Warcraft, with perhaps a little bit of EverQuest 2 and Final Fantasy XIV in there for good measure. Basically, think of any tab target game you've played with limited action sets, and that gets you to the basics. The combat in this stage already feels pretty damn good. It feels like you need to make tactical decisions, but it's more active and engaging than, say, EverQuest. If you're familiar with games like Final Fantasy XIV, there's probably a lot more similarities there than with some of the other games I mentioned. It's tab target combat with an emphasis on meaningful decisions. There's no crazy innovation here. This isn't rewriting the way combat is handled in MMOs, but rather taking some of the good things from the best tab target MMORPGs that came out before it and putting a little bit of a Pantheon spin on it. And honestly, it is exactly the type of combat that I was hoping for, the type of combat that I have been really looking for a very long time. It hit a sweet spot where it felt like it wasn't so slow to become boring, but still provided enough time to make each decision impactful. I was thinking strategically about each input and what impact they would have on the various encounters that I was going into. I thought of it as a little bit of a sped up version of Final Fantasy XIV in a lot of ways, and that may be an oversimplification, but keep in mind I only got a couple hours in the game, so this is just my general first impression. And of course, resource scarcity and cooldowns will certainly be adjusted as testing goes on, but the combination of the two did a really good job of harnessing the specific type of strategic tab target combat where you really don't want to up a decision, because it could be costly, but there's also at least a little bit of leeway there where perhaps you can recover and make a different decision and still have a fast enough thing. It's not like it's turn-based kind of thing. And of course, one thing that many of you watching this who have been following Pantheon at all or are fans of Everquest will be happy to know about, class roles are absolutely essential to the game.
And there was much rejoicing.
You learn early on that the abilities your class has help you fit those roles more efficiently. I primarily played a Dire Lord and then later a Monk. The Dire Lord is a pure tank while the Monk is more of a DPS that can double as an off tank. The difference was clear in how I could maintain and control aggro as a Dire Lord and how I could deal DPS as a Monk. If you're looking for an MMORPG that puts class interdependency and grouping first, Pantheon feels like it's not just paying lip service to it, but actually putting it in place. The MMORPG is building around the concepts of dungeon delving that made early MMOs so social in the first place. But you might still be able to be a little bit antisocial in this game. It's not just group play. I was able to solo in the game, even more so than I actually expected to be able to. There were times during my test session I logged in and played solo, and I still felt like I was making somewhat meaningful progression. I think this is going to be important to the long-term health of any MMO, Pantheon included. Focusing on group play is great, but excluding solo play completely can be very deadly. I'm a strong proponent of providing options, and that's what Pantheon is doing, with a heavy weight on one side of those options. So don't start freaking out if you prefer grouping. It was by far, and perhaps more so than any current MMO, with perhaps the exception of Everquest, that it was very important that you grouped with people. It was by far the most beneficial way to play the game, and the progression was so much faster. It was the most enjoyable part of the game for me, and the most beneficial part of the game for me. It kind of works in both ways. It's just there is that option of the slower progression if you can't find any friends. This is something that of course will be tweaked as the testing goes on, and it's hard to say exactly where Pantheon wants to fall in this scale between solo ability and group play. I can see it being very similar to Everquest early on, where Everquest had the ability to solo, but it was definitely not the preferred choice of progression. It's just, you could actually log in and do things by yourself, as long as you weren't a cleric anyway. And it wasn't just grouping though. Working together and communicating became more and more essential as we got further into the test and we got into more dangerous areas. And keep in mind, this was still pretty damn early in the game. Communicating over specific dangerous elements in combat could prevent a group wipe. The danger in this game is certainly present, especially in the goblin caves with certain elements and reactions. Speaking of which, the enemy dispositions, that is the special flavor of enemies that have different dangers to them, and something that's been part of Pantheon since the beginning, are partially implemented, and they're no f***ing joke. Tactics at times need to be adapted when a specific disposition shows up, and not reacting to that disposition fast enough will have you very quickly running back to your corpse. Something that I am very familiar with doing, not just in this game, but pretty much every game I've ever played. But it's pretty dangerous in Pantheon. And for fans of the game, that's probably music to your ears, because that's kind of what they were talking about. This game bringing back challenge. Pantheon isn't shying away from the challenge here, not even in the early levels that most games take for granted as being an extended tutorial where you just run through everything and really get to experience your own little power fantasy. If you're looking to speed through everything the way you do in a game like Elder Scrolls Online or even now World of Warcraft, you're likely gonna be pretty damn disappointed. Risk is around every corner in Pantheon, and rushing is going to get you and your group killed. Now here we have a prime example that I can show you all of was something that I totally set up and didn't make this mistake accidentally, of just kind of demonstrating how dangerous things can get and how quickly things can go sour. And you see, of course, there's only one bandit over here. No one else, not a single soul, would see any other bandit.
1, 2, 3.
And let's see what happens. That's not to say that the challenge is so intense that it is not accessible. It is still a very accessible game, and many people will be able to have fun with it. It just takes a little more thought than the usual running simulators that a lot of MMOs have become. And for a fan of the genre who has seen how it is kind of shifted and molded, and how parts of the genre have just kind of faded away, it's really nice to see this different option. An MMO where talking to your group mates is actually kind of an important thing to do. Now this next part I experienced a lot less, partially because it's just not really my thing, but I also wanted to give a little bit of information on it because I know it might be your thing. Harvesting and crafting are two things that Pantheon has really been working on lately, and it does show. It's come a long way recently, but one thing in particular I wanted to highlight was the idea of group harvesting. It's a novel concept that really goes along with the idea of group play in general that is so centric to Pantheon. It's hard to explain the excitement of helping a groupmate harvest a big ass piece of ore just to get it down faster. These harvesting nodes have a lot of health, so you're providing a big benefit. I'm not sure if they'll ever add something in to where players who are assisting get benefits as well, but you do at least gain skill ups while doing it, so it's not entirely useless, and you are helping your friends and your group mates. I mean, hell, you can even get criticals when attacking a tree. As for crafting, I'm not a crafter. There hasn't been a single MMORPG I've played in the past 2 decades where I really focused on or enjoyed crafting. Even Everquest 2 and Star Wars Galaxies, which are renowned for their crafting, I kind of just gave it all a miss. I did what I had to do. So I may be one of the worst possible people to talk about crafting. But that doesn't mean that I didn't benefit from crafting. If you helped me get some gear by crafting in the game, thank you so much. I really appreciated the gear. And the gear itself was actually some of the best gear I was able to get in the game during the test session. Something I'm sure they'll work on balancing throughout, but it was still very helpful. It was useful crafting items, and from what I experienced through others, through like seeing what they were doing and how long it was taking for them to craft, it sounded like there was a lot of different sub combines and different things like that. Again, things that they will be tweaking throughout, but they do seem to be trying to have a really interesting crafting system that requires working together, and one where the items that are crafted are going to be useful to you. But if you want a more in-depth video on crafting, Pantheon Plus has been talking about it for a while, so here's your call to action. Comment down below about Pantheon Plus, who I know is going to watch this video. Comment down below about how much you would love to see a crafting video from either Desrin or Theric. Let them know. I would have said Drac, but I think that Drac is just going to show us how to sell all the sub combines and make a ton of money doing that. So if you want to actually get actual information on crafting, let's get something from Theric or Des. Moving on to the world of Pantheon. This is one part of Pantheon I really wanted to see and experience myself, at least beyond the combat. I wanted to see where the world is, where it is currently. What can I expect from it? And did I feel somewhat immersed in the game? Even in pre-alpha, I was surprised at just how damn big the game is. This one massive area we were in felt very large. It was, however, not as full as I would like to see it. There was a lot of empty spaces where you would have liked to see more NPCs or ruins or things like that, but it is at least an interesting and large world that is there and ready for them to put in new things. It also led me to one of the biggest takeaways of Pantheon that I really didn't expect. Climbing is actually fun. Like many of you, climbing being added to Pantheon made me shrug. But then you find out that you can use it to try and escape creatures, jump across ravines, and catch the freaking wall. Make shortcuts and explore new areas. It really pulls you into the world because you're not just thinking about the enemies lurking around every corner, but also how you can navigate the world in unexpected ways. It's not just some little novel thing. Climbing in Pantheon is, like I said, actually really damn fun. The last MMORPG I remember to implement climbing was Everquest 2, all the way back with their first expansion. And in the expansion, the way that they did it was these predetermined paths that were very clearly visible. You could climb all day and it really just allowed for some fun geography tricks, not so much different gameplay. In Pantheon, it kind of changes everything about your approach to the game. You start looking for shortcuts, looking to see how tall something is and if you're able to make it. And as I can attest, repeatedly finding out that hell no, you cannot, and you will fall to your death. A lot. The world felt open to climbing. Surfaces all over the place allowed you to scale them like Spider-Man. It's not that you can climb absolutely anything. I don't recall any buildings that were scalable, for example, but cliffs beckoned you to climb up, as did cave walls. There were even little secrets hidden atop certain areas that you could only get to through climbing. I'm excited to see how Visionary Realms uses this in the future because it opens up so many possibilities. Shortcuts, hideaways, camps, the tech is already there and it's already working pretty damn well. It all adds to the part of what Joppa has said about travel in the game being an event of its own. Climbing adds to that. It helps make it surprisingly fun to just go out and start exploring. As do the lore pings you get that were sadly not fully implemented, but still gave me chills when I heard the first little ping telling me, imploring me to go do some more exploration. The perception system in Pantheon is that little lore or quest hint you get above your head as you run about the area, and has taken on new meaning for me after playing way too much Baldur's Gate 3. It brings the world alive in ways you don't expect it to. More so than a simple achievement. If utilized to its fullest, exploring the world of Terminus will be an event in itself, and learning the lore of the world through perception won't just keep lore nerds like myself thrilled, but also perhaps those that enjoy lore in a more passing fashion, because it is fed to you in a way that's a bit like uncovering a mystery. A way that I think really helps engage people that might, in other times, just kind of skip right past it. So after the play session, after this time getting to actually play and experience a game that I have been watching since about 2017, what are my takeaways? What do I actually think and feel about Pantheon Rise of the Fallen? What are the things that I'm excited about and the things that I might be a bit nervous about? Well, first is going to be that the bones of Pantheon are here. The game that so many of us have wanted to play for years is there. But I'll be honest, it feels like it's a long way off. There's so much that still needs to be added and refined, especially artistically. And for people that have been waiting a long time for Pantheon, I'm sure that's upsetting or disappointing. I can't pretend that I don't feel that way too. It's been a long time. What I can say though, and what I want to reiterate here is, this is the game that I pledged for. This is the game that I believed in because I wanted to see what they were making. It is the game that I was excited about in 2017. It is still that game, and it's one that I think is needed in the MMORPG genre right now. I can say now with 100% certainty, if this game continues on its current path, and continues to make progress and eventually launches, this is a game that will fill a void in the MMORPG space that has been missing for a long time, as many games since about 2005, 2006 have tried, modernizing and going in the way of trying to make the game as accessible and quick as possible and having a direct and only focus on endgame. This game is focusing on the ability to work with friends, the ability having challenge in the MMORPG, difficult PvE encounters, a world that is interesting and exciting to explore. It is a game that will make you think of games like Everquest, a game that will make you think of Final Fantasy XIV, World of Warcraft Classic. It seems to be hitting all those notes. It pays homage to classic MMORPGs, but it still feels like its own thing. This is not just a reskin of EverQuest. This is Pantheon. It has inspiration very obviously from games like Vanguard Saga of Heroes and EverQuest, as well as other tab target MMOs, but you can see the other inner workings there of different things that they're trying to implement. Things that will make it fun for the people that are seeking the social, challenging PvE MMO experience. There's just one problem. It's not here yet. My concerns for this MMO have shifted a bit since getting to actually play it. Now, of course, I'm still going to have the macro concerns about the MMO, if it's going to be kind of like commercially viable in a market that has been kind of spoon-fed a specific type of MMORPG for about a decade and a half at this point. A specific marketplace that has been missing a challenging PvE MMO, at least challenging from the very start, and one that focuses on social interactions. I still think that it has its own place and it can still be very successful, but the concerns that I have now are about, when are we going to get the game? How long will it take for Pantheon to get over the finish line? Because being pretty honest here, it's got work to go. It still has a lot to do, and as much as I want to just sit back here and only sing the praises of this game that I personally have supported, that I learned about because of the content creator who showed it to me, Carnage, one that actually kind of is the entire reason why I have this channel in the first place. Basically, Carnage and Pantheon are what got me into content. But I have to be honest, and I am concerned with how much still needs to be made, how much we may or may not have already seen. I can sit here and pretend, well, maybe there's this other client that we didn't get to see in testing and they have all this other stuff ready to go, and by September, when things will pick up again for Pantheon, we'll get some great reveals. By the end of the year, maybe we'll have an alpha date. I can sit here and say that would all be fantastic, but my concern is going to be, is it too late already? I don't know that it is. I just worry that maybe MMORPGs are just a very, very difficult thing to be made through Kickstarter MMOs. I think it is something we kind of need to be made from an independent studio, but damn, it is a lot of work. Can Pantheon launch a complete MMO? I don't have an answer for that. None of us do. But I'll point to one thing that makes me more confident in this particular game than some others. Pantheon is not being built around a business model that is self-sustainable without launch. There is a clear incentive for Pantheon to launch. There is a clear incentive to get to alpha. The same can't be said for some other independent MMOs that have a business model that helps fund the game in perpetuity without launch by utilizing in-game cash shops and a pseudo launch. This game feels like the MMO being created by a team that cares about making the game, and they want to make a game that people will enjoy. I think my concerns for Pantheon and my concerns for the Riot MMO are kind of in a similar space, where my major worry is the time it will take for them to finally launch, and whether or not if it does get scrapped, the reason being that because it wasn't up to the quality standards that they had set for themselves. This is something that the Riot MMO has already talked about. It's not necessarily something that Pantheon has talked about. It's just one of the things, the feelings that I get, that there is a expectation of quality that they want to provide with this MMO. But like I said in my video about Kickstarter MMOs that I covered right here, Pantheon and Kickstarter MMOs in general are like trying to move a mountain with shovels. It's a very difficult thing, but if any game is going to be able to create something special like this, I think Pantheon might be it. I want to take a quick moment to thank Visionary Realms for letting me make this video and giving me the ability to kind of speak my mind. Thank you very much.